Hey there. Welcome, family, to the inaugural voyage of Crown Royal Presents Food for Thought. Um, this is a subsidiary of the Behind Closed Doors, and some of you might know me from that show. And of course, we've been broadcasting here on the Plug Studio Network. Um, I want to give you a little overview of the show that we're going to be doing. We're going to be detailing a lot of things, or I say we because it's is a group thing, but you'll see me. We're going to do an overview about talking about discussing about politics, race, and social justice, and basically anything that plagues the black community historically um, and even to today, and try to actually really dissect and get into the crust of wait a minute, how did we get here? And what are some of the solutions in order for us to actually have a better environment to live in this place we call America? Um, First of all, I would like to let you know off the bat that this is not going to be a show that ultimately is here for any confirmation or affirmation of society. Um, I may have plenty of opinions that differ from you, and that's fine because unlike what most people think in the vast media sphere, black people do not think just one way. We have a lot of different ideologies, and I'm pretty sure my ideology will not actually phase in with what you actually say what you need to do for you and your family. Or but I chose the title "Food for Thought" ultimately because I want to give you something to ponder. If you look up the definition, it says basically to give you something to think about and ponder after you hear it. And that is my main purpose in doing this show. And in some way, I want to actually educate some of us to certain things that we may not actually see or may not even know growing up, or we don't actually pay attention to. Um, I know in the past few months, a lot of us may have heard terms like systemic racism or the system actually being broken. Let me explain to you right now. The system that we live in is not broken. It's working exactly the way that it's supposed to work. The system is designed from its basically built to make sure that people that look like me do not have an equal footing in this country. And let me preface this by saying the great author and activist James Baldwin once said, I love America more than any other country in the world. And exactly for this reason, I insist the right to criticize her perpetually. I believe that. I believe that I am a patriot. I believe that I do love America. But in order for me to actually make it, as a lot of people will say, a more perfect union, we have to speak out when we see things that are not right. And ultimately, in a lot of cases, we live in two separate Americas. The America that I grew up in is probably familiar to people that are watching this. And some people may say it's not familiar to them. But the only thing I can do is give you aspects of a man who was 47 years old, that was born and raised in Camden, New Jersey, who has five children, three of them which are black males that are considered millennials or Gen Zs, and what I have to deal with in that mindset, in that space. So, we're going to talk politics. We're going to have shows about the vote. voting is very important. We're going to have shows that talk about redlining, gerrymandering, and we're going to have shows that I plan to have shows that actually tell us more insight on how we get here as a people over these 400-year journey. Um, Mass incarceration, uh, the war on drugs. These are only little things that I plan on highlighting and trying to bring to light. A lot of these things we may already also know, but hopefully at the end of each show that you will actually say, I didn't know that. That was interesting. Um, my overview will actually be I will give you facts at the beginning of the show, which I'm going to go into that. And then towards the end, after giving these facts, I have my soapbox section. Whereas though, if you don't know, you look up soapbox, that's when I actually give my opinion on the subject matter that we have discussed that I brought to light that particular evening. And a lot of times, my opinion, I'm more Malcolm than Martin. I I always trying to describe myself as I have a field Negro mentality. Um, I believe nothing in this country has ever been given by just speeches and marches. I believe you actually have to have a lot of other things to back that. And no revolution has ever been pushed on this soil without true blue dedication and faith and love for what you believe in. Now, with that being said, our topic that we're going to be dealing with tonight is patriotism and the national anthem. And we often have come to light in the last several years as though we've been on two different sides, and what do we actually call what is patriotism, and the misconception with the flag and kneeling and being disrespectful to the military. Let me make this point, and if you don't know, when you have the flag does not signify the military. My grandfather fought in World War II. I have two older cousins that had over 20-year careers in the military, and it has given them a very good life. But the situation with the flag has been hijacked, and it seems as though in the last few months after the death of George Floyd, that many of us have come, not many of us, many of others have come to the point that where as though when you kneel towards the flag is basically what it is, as is written in the Constitution, is basically showing that you have an issue with the government that you live in. That is a First Amendment right. And one of the things that I do love basically about this country is the freedom of speech, even if we don't agree. Because I disagree with a whole lot of people. I disagree with neo-Nazis. I disagree with fascists. But I say this, everybody should have a right to believe what they want to believe. So give me that same right, even though I disagree. I also would say this when we start talking about patriotism. It starts with the introduction or indoctrination of when we're children, the Pledge of Allegiance. That is actually something that, in hindsight, when I started wanting to do this show, I had to think of a personal reflection, and just automatically I knew the Pledge of Allegiance. Again, like I said, I'm 47 years old. I haven't been in elementary school in almost 40 years. But I know the Pledge of Allegiance backwards and forward. And I didn't have to think about it. And it made me go into this rabbit hole of when you start being a thinker, why would it be so prevalent for you to fall in love or swear your allegiance to a country that you were born in? And it made me actually wonder, like, did I really have to stand? And it made me think of the back when I was 10, one of my classmates, Donnie Moore, I remember his name to this day. He had glasses, little square, little afro cut, skinny kid. Um, One day I paid attention to the Pledge of Allegiance, and he wasn't speaking it, and he didn't have his hand over his heart. And I was inquisitive about it. After later in the day, I asked him. It was during lunchtime, actually. I asked him why didn't he do the Pledge of Allegiance, and he stated to me it's because he was Jehovah's Witness, and he didn't have to do it because of his religious beliefs. Never knew it. And it dawned on me when I was doing research for this show to look up when did this happen. So looking it up, I saw that the Pledge of Allegiance originally in 1940, it was a case of whereas though Millston versus Virginia, and it was actually upheld by the Supreme Court that every child had to stand and pledge their allegiance. And this was now this is a funny case because only 3 years later, the Supreme Court then reversed its own precedent, which it very rarely happens. In a ruling against West Virginia State Board of Education versus Barnett, Associate Ronald Jackson stated that it was against the law and in the First Amendment right to compel anybody to pledge their loyalty to a nation based on their sex, religion, or anything. It was just too petty for anyone to actually force anyone to have to pledge their allegiance. And I think we lose sight of that. I mean, now today, it's not something that is actually practiced throughout the country. And I think that's a good thing because how you can't automatically just assume or force somebody to say, I am an American when it's on your birth certificate. And I think a lot of times what we do is we want to take the good things about our country and try to erase and hide the atrocities and the bad things about it. It's I'm sorry, it's not a salad. It's not a diet. We can't just take out the croutons and toss the tomatoes or the cucumbers because we don't like it, and we'll just go with the lettuce and the onions and some cheese because that's the good shit. You got to take it for all that it is, and a lot of times we, even as you can see, even as a child, we are forced to love this country when we don't have an opinion of it because we have different walks of life. Another thing that I like to bring to light that a lot of people may not understand, and this is relative to the Colin Kaepernick situation, that is like just the anniversary of it was 4 years ago. Today, when I'm taping this show, yes, it is taped. So, um, about the flag, and I like to say that if I'm being honest, the American flag means something different to me than it may even mean to you, may mean to my kids, or maybe somebody that doesn't look like me. A lot of times today, when I see an American flag flying on the back of somebody's truck, it means something similar to as when I see the Confederate flag or when I see a Trump 2020 flag. And that might be sad to say, but I think a lot of times the symbolism of the American flag is been consolidated with the same rhetoric as a Trump 2020 or a Confederate flag. I remember in 2008 when Obama was running for president, they would constantly use the term real Americans, or certain people that look a certain way, or real Americans were Americans that were in rural, country settings. People from the big city weren't real Americans. People that didn't believe in the Second Amendment weren't real Americans. I don't think none of us have, the real right to say who and what makes somebody a real American. If a real American is somebody that's going to put up with racism, sexism, mass incarceration, threaten of having life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, then I may not be a real American by those measurement points. But let me go on to what I wanted to talk about with the Star Spangled Banner, or our national anthem. Star Spangled Banner was written by Francis Scott Key in 1814. This was during what was called the War of 1812, even though it was written in 1814. So we're not going to go with the whole thing about that, but that sounds ignorant. But what a lot of people don't know, my age, people above my age, and I'm going to be honest, I didn't find this out until about 7 or 8 years ago. With doing some of my readings, and because I'm big into history and I'm big into knowing the history of America so I can understand it. It's a verse that has been deleted, and I'm pretty sure some of us be like, yeah, I heard about it, this, that, and other. The verse that's actually been deleted from the Star Spangled Banner, which was written again by Francis Scott Key, who was a known slave owner. And he actually founded the American Confederacy Society, the ACS, which he was kind of hypocritical because he didn't believe in slavery, but he also didn't believe in that the black man should live in harmony with white people. So he was a separatist. But when he wrote the Star Spangled Banner, it was during a battle. And it said, this is the verse that is not actually present today. And where is that band who so vehemently swore that the havoc of war and the battles of confusion, a home in a country should leave us no more. Their blood has washed out their foul footsteps, pollution. No refuge could save the harrowing enslaved from the terror of flight or the gloom of the grave. And the star-spangled banner in triumph doth wave. Are here the land of the free and the home of the brave. Now, we all know that in colonial times, we spoke a different way because we were British. So you're probably sitting there like, ugh, what the shit did he just say? No refuge is escape. We know what a refuge is. Or could save the hireling. Hireling, if you look up hireling is a person that is poor and work and has menial work. We know what a slave is. And the terror of the flight and the gloom of the grave. This was all written because during this battle, it was actually a negotiation to swap prisoners. And the British were going to give some of their American, the colonialists, because it wasn't America yet. Well, they called themselves America, yeah. And the Americans was going to give some of the British soldiers back. But a war incited because the British was going to attack the fort that they were actually floating away from. But Key was one of the ambassadors that came to negotiate to get these men back, and he saw that many of the British soldiers were black. They were runaway slaves that fled the colonies and went to Britain and to fight. Because, I'm going to put it just plain, y'all all white men, at least this one going to say I'm free. I roll with him instead of rolling with y'all that say I'm going to be a slave. So that's where the depiction of this song came from. And greatly when they actually made it the national anthem, they edited it, which happens a lot. A lot of editing goes into play. So my whole point when learning this is, fuck was I supposed to stay up for this for anyway? Because context matters, right? What it actually really meant matters. So this wasn't for me. So why should I be appalled that this man kneeled for an anthem that wasn't designed for him either? And we can always say, well, it's the American anthem, this, that, no. But it says in the Constitution that you don't have to stand. That's not disrespectful. If you actually looked up how the certain things that actually disrespect the flag, you couldn't have a flag on a cup. You ain't supposed to flag should never hit the ground. But legally, you can burn a flag in protest. So, what are we really talking about? Are we talking about a flag, or are we talking about police brutality? Because that's what got hijacked, police brutality. And that brings me into, roll this all together. As of this taping, 2 days ago, another young black man was shot 7 times in Kenosha, Wisconsin. This young black man was Jacob Blake Jr., father, had 3 of his children in the car, which he was unarmed and walking back into. Now, I'm going to tell you this. I seen the video. And I'm not a lawyer, and I don't care to try to figure out the law. All I do know is I can see stuff with my eyes. And I'm pretty sure that they're going to try to say whatever, resisting arrest, things. I don't care. What I care about is an unarmed black man walking away, getting into a car with his children, and was pulled by his t-shirt and shot in the back 7 times. When I say young man, he's 29. And now that I'm 47, I can actually say 29 is very young to me. But this hit me hard because, one, my son texted me, "Did you see there was another shooting?" My 20-year-old son. And I said no, because I tend to, I unplug sometimes. I don't want to see the news, and I read some of these books. I play little games on my phone. I don't want to know. So when I did get the information, he said he was in front of his 3 young children, his 3 sons. I have 3 sons. This is how it resonated with me. I can think of how many times that I've been in a car and my 3 sons are in the back seat. So this resonated with me. When he was 29, this resonates because when I was 29, my last son, who's 18 now, was born on February 7th of 2002. And just 8 months later, to the day, on October 7th, 2032, 02, I'm sorry, I lost my father. So in that same year of 29, I gained a son and I lost my father. And to actually sit there and see that this man was 29 in front of his 3 children, just like I have, 3 sons in the back seat, and got shot, and they could have lost their father, that hit me. A little bit different than when other things hit me, because guess what? That I saw myself for real that time. Being that young dad. And it was one of his son's birthdays. So, and I'm saying that because who gives a fuck about a flag? Kaepernick was kneeling about brutality. About that just happened. He said that. I'm talking about oppression of my people. I'm talking about police brutality. That's what he was talking about. He wasn't talking about a figment, something that you can't see and can't touch. He was talking about something that means something to him and his community, something bigger than just a somewhat thought of patriotism. And I'm saying that because patriotism is different to different people. The national anthem means different to different people. It'll mean something different to a military family. It means something different to a white person brought up in the suburbs that hasn't seen the negatives of America to the extent that I have seen. It's different when I have to have conversations with my 3 sons that some people out there that don't look like me never have to have. I explained this to my son, who's 20, a few weeks ago. The way I was brought up, my grandfather told stories. And you probably, a lot of people out there may have the same uncle or grandfather that's, from the South that lived Jim Crow and lived through lynching and lived segregation. And my grandfather had this way of talking and telling stories and kind of giving you the information that you really needed, but kind of making it fun so you can actually visualize things. I like to think that I inherited that from him. So I was explaining to my son, and I hope that you can grapple on this analogy that I use. I like to use analogies and try to visualize. I want people that don't look like me and don't maybe have the same politics as me. Listen to this when I say about why we may differ on how we feel about America. Let's say America is the father. America is the father of all of us. Now, as the children of America, we all don't look alike. We all have different backgrounds, and we all still, in the concept of a family, still supposed to love your father. Because that's the most easiest thing. You love your parents because they gave birth to you, right? Let me explain to you like this. I have white brothers and sisters. I have Hispanic brothers and sisters. I have Asian brothers and sisters. Now, when we come and we live in the house of our father, which is America, me and my brothers and sisters that look like me try hard to make sure that our father loves us and respects us. So let's say everybody in the house has chores, but the chores that I get as the black child, I always gotta go do the yard work or clean the toilets. And I gotta do the most menial jobs. And at the end of the week, my brethren who had better opportunities just had to, fix the bed, maybe take the trash out, maybe just a little dusting. At the end of the week, we get a little stipend or what they used to call when we was younger. When you got money for your look, allowance. That's what they used to call it. You could tell I ain't get that much allowance growing up because I couldn't even think about what the hell the day was. But at the end of the week, I'd worked hard, did just as much work as my brothers and my sisters who just happened to be of a different complexion, and they got more than me. Or I constantly got told it wasn't good enough. Do it again. Now, again, no matter what, you're supposed to love your father. And let me expand this to a point so we can get there. America adopts children. We call them immigrants. And they become naturalized citizens. They weren't born here. All cool with me. Shit. All of us is immigrants unless you a Native American, because we all on stolen land. So my belief of an immigrant is anybody that is wasn't here before fake ass Christopher Columbus. Which, do your research, Mayflower sailed what? They say 1620. Shit. Africans was here in 1619. But I digress. That's another show. I want to get on immigrants. So these immigrants are adoptive children of our father, America. And guess they love their father. Love it. So no matter what, because they see the greatness of America. They adapt that. They take in to their soul because they read into the propaganda. They want to see the beauty of the Statue of Liberty. They want to come and get some of the riches that this country has to offer. So they ignore the history and the filth and the destruction that has taken place on this fertile ground. So they love their father because their father may have taken them away from a third world country, from a war-torn country. They seek asylum. They seek the promise of democracy. They seek the love that America extends throughout the world. So, all those atrocities, all that filth, all that discrimination. What? They should just work harder. They should be better. Follow the laws. Follow the rules. They don't know what they got here. They're just lazy. And I attend. The black person is the most hated race in the world. On the lowest of totem poles. And then the worst is being a black woman. Because we even downgrade our own women sometimes. Let me get back to my point. How would we think if your father was a rapist? If your father beat your mother? If your father killed your brothers and sisters and hung them? If your father wouldn't allow you to sit at the same table with your white brothers and sisters? Would you still love your father as much as other people that are in your family? And I say this because I always believe if you have a rift in your family, if a parent and a child has a rift, it's the parent's job to fix it. I will say this to my dying day. If I have a problem, if my child has a problem with me, and they don't want to talk to me, they don't want to sit in a room with me, and they don't respect me, because love goes out the window. Ultimately, in my view as a parent, no matter what, you want your children to respect you. Because love is supposed to be a given. But what happens when the love is lost because you have been tormented and raped and beaten and set aside for your whole existence? What would that flag look like to you? Looks like some hate. I say that because it is not my responsibility or anybody who has been mistreated by our father, America, to fix it. It is his responsibility. And he won't do it unless we say, I am tired of being beaten. I am tired of being misled. I am tired of the okey doke. Unlike Malcolm, I call myself an American. Back in the 60s, he would say the so-called Negro, so-called black man that living in America. But like Malcolm, I will say this, and I quote, I don't know the American dream. I've only lived the American nightmare. And that goes across for my people. The nightmare is not as overt as it was in the 60s. But in a lot of ways, all that shit is creeping back up right now. I'm not going to say we haven't made strides in this country. I'll preface this by saying that I love this country. But what happens often is we love the dream, the thought. But what if you don't actually get a chance to be part of the dream? What if it's stacked against you? Are you still supposed to love your father the same way? Does that make you less than a patriot because you have doubts and you question? I'm sorry, I don't think we still live in a society of where as though a parent can just say, because I said so. Why? Because I said so. Children nowadays too smart. Shit, my kids are smarter than me already, and I know that. They got more information than I did when I was their age. But what I try to ground them in is the same thing I want to ground you in, is being a patriot. It's the same way as you questioning the acts of your father. Some people got fathers that's criminals. Some people got fathers that's drug addicts. Some people got fathers that are alcoholics. Do you question that, or do you love them unconditionally? I say you don't have to love the aspects of America that you disagree with unconditionally. And me as a black man, I don't love a lot of what my father has done to me and my people. So I'm a patriot because I want my father to go to rehab and get fixed. I want him to be better. I want to wake up someday and actually feel good about putting an American flag out on my porch. That day may never come in my lifetime, but I want it. And because I want it, that makes me a patriot. With that said, I'm going to get off my soapbox for this episode. You can put comments at the bottom after you see this video, and I will respond. Hopefully, I did give you some food for thought, and you could look, kind of full from that today. Also, you can like and share, and I would ask for, if you did like the show, for you to maybe share it with some of your youngsters, your children. I try not to use too much foul language. And also, if you have some allies and people that don't look like me, or maybe you have some wannabe people that don't understand why we feel a certain type of way, you can share with them so they can have a little bit of understanding about how the Pledge of Allegiance, the national anthem, and the flag is not, don't feel the same way to people that look like me. And I'm not just saying the children of slaves, because a lot of us that look like us, none of the people were in bondage. But that's not asked or chosen when your skin color is just of the melanin complexion. Again, I like to thank you for tuning in. You can find this on all the Plug Studio network platforms, behind closed doors, and our Speak on It BCD on YouTube. And until next time, hopefully you're full. And I like to say the revolution will not be televised, because it will be live, and it starts in your mind. Thank you. Good night.